Have you noticed something strange happening lately? You browse Netflix for hours but can't find a good movie to watch anymore. The games you used to love just don't bring the same thrill anymore. Conversations feel repetitive, predictable, and you find fewer and fewer people who can genuinely intrigue you. Is it just you, or is there something deeper happening? Stick around because today we're uncovering nature's biggest trick: how happiness is designed to be elusive, making pleasure harder to grasp as we age. But don't worry, I got you. I'll give you some very practical techniques inspired from Noesis Theory that can keep boosting your pleasure well into your golden years. In our previous video, we established that our teens and 20s are formative years in our lives, shaping our main pathways for pleasure onwards. So what's wrong with that, you might ask? If I enjoy talking to people, then let me enjoy this thing for the decades to come. You like drinking and partying? Sure, keep doing that till your teeth fall off on the dance floor. What's the problem? But then, as you grow into your 30s and definitely in your 40s, you start noticing that you're becoming more particular about things, more selective, maybe even a bit picky. Oh, I now know better what I like, you might say. I've developed a more refined taste. But have you really? Or is something else going on? Here's the $1,000,000 question. Did you actually build a better understanding of your true taste? Or did your sources of pleasure actually change over time? Did they become fewer? Did you actually lose the ability to enjoy the things that you previously loved? My thesis, supported by Noesis Theory, is mind-boggling to say the least. Our brain is literally designed to lose its pleasure sources over time. And here's the fascinating part about how it works. Every second you're awake, your brain is doing future predictions. In fact, right now, as you're watching this video, you're unconsciously trying to predict what I'm going to say next, hoping it's fresh, new, and unpredictable. Why? Because in your brain, everything predictable is filtered at the entrance and ignored. The only way to truly feel something, to experience real emotion, whether positive or negative, is through what we call out-of-context experiences. If something is predictable, your brain has already processed it, and it has either learned how to deal with it, or decided it's inconsequential and therefore not worth the mental energy. And here's where nature plays its cruel trick on us. Every single time you experience pleasure, you get a little more used to it. You build tolerance. It becomes in context. And what did we just say about in context experiences? They diminish pleasure, which means pleasure is actually a finite resource in your life. Every time you draw some pleasure from this limited pool, you are literally depriving it from your future self. Don't believe me? Let me prove it to you with several examples and thought experiments from everyday life. Let's start with the roller coaster example. Picture this. First time on a roller coaster. Exhilarating, right? Or terrifying, depending on your definition of fun. Let's go a second time. Still quite fun. Third time in a row. That was nice. Wanna go a fourth time? You might think, nah, I think I've had enough for today. Why do you willingly say no to something that was super pleasurable the first time? Because after that first ride, your brain was primed to predict the immediate future and cut it out from the experience. The drops, the loops, the speed, it all becomes anticipated. The thrill diminishes because the element of surprise is gone. Your future prediction ruined it. Want a different example where future prediction ruins the fun? Let me tell you some Chuck Norris jokes. And I recognize that this is a very risky move for my viewers because I'm not good at telling jokes. At least that's what my wife tells me. But anyway, here it goes. Chuck Norris can dribble with a bowling ball. Chuck Norris can kill 2 stones with 1 bird. Chuck Norris can light a fire by rubbing 2 ice cubes together. Chuck Norris can clap with 1 hand. Chuck Norris can count to infinity twice. Chuck Norris can unscramble an egg. Chuck Norris can hear sign language. Did you notice they started becoming less and less fun towards the end? Even if you hadn't heard these specific ones before, your brain quickly notices that they follow a similar theme. It can future predict the structure and boom, not funny anymore. But future prediction kills many more things than just jokes. Let's talk about something more serious. Why does marriage often kill passion? Think about it. At the start of a relationship, your partner is an unknown. Every interaction is a mystery. You're constantly guessing, often wrong, always surprised. Oh, they're mysterious. And the more mysterious they are, the more it fuels the passion. Out of context experiences are the trick for entering the conscious part of your brain and evoking emotions. But as you learn to predict your partner's every move, every reaction, and well, you can guess what happens to that mystery. And it's not just relationships. Let's talk about vacations. Would you want to visit the exact same vacation spot every year for the rest of your life? Sure, you could. But after a while, it gets boring. You'll want to go somewhere different to spice things up a bit. Speaking of spicing things up, ever wondered why spices were so incredibly valuable in the ancient world? Why wars were fought over them? Because they make food exciting again. They were exotic, unpredictable. Our palates weren't trained to anticipate their flavors and thus unlocked new pleasure pathways. Should I continue with more examples? Let's talk about retail therapy. Come on, be honest. How many bags and shoes can you buy nowadays and still feel that rush? Does the joy last a week? A day perhaps? The feeling got predictable in the same way that you got bored of your toys when you were a kid. That's the exact same feeling, right? Why can't you play anymore with children's toys? Because they're predictable for you, uninteresting. Your brain learned their patterns decades ago. But now here's a curveball. Why sports like basketball, football, baseball can keep you entertained for decades? Because they're designed to be super unpredictable. Touching the ball 2 centimeters off in any direction, and you can have an entirely different outcome in a game and even in a championship. And speaking of sports, ever wondered why we love cheering for the underdog so much? Why those rags to riches stories get us every time? Because all rational predictions say they can't win. So when they do, it's totally out of context and bam, emotion explosion. That's why gambling is so addictive. It exploits this exact characteristic of our brain. An unexpected win is the sweetest win because it can penetrate our filter. So be very, very careful with those things. Let's transition to movie examples. Can you watch The Sixth Sense again and feel the same shock? Nope. Your brain knows the twist from the start. Why weren't the new Star Wars films as enjoyable as the originals? Because it's always about destroying some kind of Death Star, same story, different packaging, predictable. But let me ask you a question. Why do movie stars frequently get tired of fame but rarely get tired of money? Can you guess it? Because money can buy you many different experiences, keeping things unpredictable. But wait a minute, I can hear some of you objecting already. What about songs that get better with repeated listening? What about comfort food that you never get tired of? What about things that grow on you over time? Excellent points. And here's where it gets really interesting. If something is totally out of context, you might not find it pleasurable from the start. Think about your first coffee, your first beer, or that weird experimental music that your friend keeps recommending. The pleasure can actually increase as you get slightly familiar with it. But, and here's the crucial part, once you reach that sweet spot of familiarity with repeated exposure, it's all downhill from there on. This actually might explain why the Star Wars sequels tried to mirror the original trilogy so closely. They were desperately trying to tap into that familiarity and nostalgia of the audience. But here's where they miscalculated. Most fans had already watched the original movies countless times. They were already way down that downward pleasure slope. So what they needed was something fresh and exciting, which is exactly why shows like Andor felt so refreshing. I hope my examples were convincing enough by now to allow me to draw a first conclusion. That the game of life itself is fundamentally rigged against us. Life, at least in the Western world during peaceful times, follows a pretty typical script. You're born, you realize you're an autonomous entity. That's when the fun begins. You go through school, making friends, learning new things. Everything is novel, exciting. College years, tough but stimulating, more fun. Then you explore your sexuality, make relationships, find what's a good match for you, get lots of pleasure in many different ways while trying to get as few STDs as possible in the process. Again, fun. Eventually, you find the one. Spoiler alert, based on divorce rates, 50% of you think you have found one, but actually don't. Anyway, don't worry about that. So what we're saying, marriage, family, kids. Yes, those first few years are tough and sleepless, but they're completely out of context and offer profound new pleasures you've never experienced before. And then you hit your 40s. And that's where the midlife crisis strikes. But why? Think about it. What major milestones do you have left to experience? How many of them are truly novel and not just a slightly different perspective on something you've already done? Grandkids? Sure, but similar to kids. New relationships, new friends? Maybe, but often more of the same. New job? Maybe, but for most, their job is not their primary source of pleasure. There's nothing fundamentally new ahead waiting for you till the end. In video game terms, it's like you've finished the main quest and now you're just coasting along doing repetitive side quests. And here's the truly mind-blowing part. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. Our civilization has developed crucial milestones of novel, out-of-context experiences until you've generated offspring. After that, society just wants you to grind away and be mindlessly productive for the good of the next generation. There are no more out-of-context milestones built into the system after that. There never needed to be from an evolutionary perspective. And here's the kicker. It's not just humans. Your dog settles down as it ages. It's not as playful. It prefers to sit around idle instead of running around all day. Why? Because it has learned to predict how its environment behaves. Fewer things can excite it. So don't think we're some special snowflake here. The game is rigged for all living organisms, pushing them to strive for more and never settle. But it manifests primarily in humans because 1. We're super good at learning and future predicting. 2. We live quite long. And 3. Our lives are relatively unchallenging. Most of the animal kingdom is striving to survive every single day. But we're rewarded with the opportunity to get used to life and get bored. So other than following the paleo paradigm of throwing ourselves into the jungle to see if we can survive, is there any other way to address this problem? Is there hope? Yes, there is. Let's draw some powerful insights from Noesis Theory to tackle this problem and keep reaping pleasures well into old age and beyond. Number 1. Start with an intentional mindset. Be strategic. Think of pleasure like a precious resource that needs to be protected and managed. Use your planning part of the brain to make decisions that protect your pleasure centers over time. Number 2. Recycle old pleasures. Your common methods of reaping pleasure are like onion layers around the central core pleasure center that was formed in your early years. For more on that, check out this video. But here's a fascinating quirk of our brain. Your prediction capability actually declines over time. So after many years of not visiting some pathways to pleasure, these onion layers peel off and the core of your pleasure center becomes accessible again. How to do this? Make a habit to regularly review old photos and videos to bring back sweet memories from the past. Switch your Spotify playlists to listen to music that you enjoyed in previous decades. Meet up with old friends to discuss and relive your shared memories from the past. Idea number 3. Practice intentional fasting from pleasure. It's the exact same idea. Depriving yourself from pleasurable stimuli can actually resensitize you to them. Like how bread feels like a sweet indulgence if you were on a strict meat and vegetable diet for a couple of months. Like how your passion for your partner gets revitalized if you've been out of town for a week and you just meet again. Idea 4. Take a page from the Stoics. Practice imagining losing the things you love. You're essentially hacking your predictive pathways. If you force yourself to actually believe you might lose something, reality becomes fresh and unpredictable again. 5. Learn to penetrate the filter through mindful attention. Instead of letting your brain go on autopilot, practice living in the moment. Focus intentionally on minute details. Rediscover the texture of your morning coffee. Try looking at your partner's face as if you're seeing them for the first time. What new detail can you discover and appreciate? And finally, number 6, get out of the loop. Embrace the different. Be spontaneous. Say yes to new experiences. Travel to new places. Try learning a new skill. And do it enough times to push through that initial out-of-context discomfort. Let's wrap this up with a thought experiment that I think brings home the whole discussion. Imagine if, before every emotional experience in your life, you were given a choice between 2 pills. Kind of like the Matrix, but with a different twist. The red pill lets you remember the experience afterwards, which means you'll build tolerance, just like we discussed. But the blue pill? Now that's interesting. With the blue pill, you won't build any memories of the experience, allowing you to enjoy it like new every time, as long as you continue taking that pill before the experience. Which one would you take? Write your thoughts in the comments below. Should we forget pleasure just so we can experience it like new every time? But then, if you don't retain any memory of that pleasure, did you ever actually live it? And how would you know to seek it again? And what about pain? Should we forget that too, to avoid carrying emotional scars? But if the pain doesn't sting in our memory, how will we learn to avoid danger next time? Let me take this even further. Imagine you're God for a moment, designing life for your creation. Or maybe you're the lead game designer for SimCity 2045, and you can program exactly how your Sims neurons react to everything. What decision would you make? Would you design beings who can get pleasure from the same things indefinitely? But consider this. A being who gains the same level of pleasure from the same activity over and over might never innovate or strive for something more. Our diminishing pleasure drives us to seek new experiences, learn, and grow. You know, ancient Greeks surely grappled with the same topics because they captured this eternal struggle in their myths. Take King Midas. Everything he touched turned to gold. Isn't that exactly what happens to us? Everything we manage to grasp quickly loses the very qualities that made us want it in the first place. And so we need to look for something new. Or consider Tantalus, cursed to stand in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree. Every time he reached for the fruit, the branches would lift just out of reach. Every time he tried to drink, the water would recede from his grasp. Doesn't that sound familiar? Happiness and fulfillment are always close by, but when you try to reach them, they recede just a little bit. Still in view, still potentially reachable, but never quite in your grasp. And then there's Sisyphus, pushing his boulder up the mountain every single day. Even if he reaches the top, there's no pleasure to be gained because the next day it's back down at the bottom and he has to start all over again. Are we really that different from these ancient tales? Is life anything more than this eternal chase? Could it even be anything more than that? Final thoughts. Understanding that our brains are wired to reduce pleasure from repeated experiences can be both sobering and empowering. Sobering because it explains why we might feel less satisfied as we age. Empowering because it provides us with a roadmap to counteract it. By adopting an intentional mindset that appreciates the moment, enjoys with moderation, revisits all pleasures, and embraces novelty and new challenges, we can keep life exciting and pleasurable. Remember, pleasure won't be there forever unless you actively take steps to cultivate it. Thank you for enjoying the whole video. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you have any other practices to share that keep you excited to get up from bed? Is there a way out of this cosmic trap? If you found this video insightful, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And if you like exploring fascinating insights like this about how our minds work, I would very much appreciate if you can subscribe to the channel to get notified when I upload new videos. You can also check out 2 of my previous videos where I explore the human brain using Noesis Theory by clicking on any of these videos here. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.